It was July 2004 when I first landed in New York from India. And if you have never been to New York, July is a pretty good month to enjoy New York. Every day I was discovering something new about this beautiful city. I was meeting new people, experimenting with tons of interesting things as an 18-year-old boy. And in few months, I started going to college as well. And spirituality became part of almost every interaction that I was having with students, professors, just fellow people that I was coming across every other day. And after hearing my spiritual practice, they would often ask me, "What is your lineage? Do you follow a certain spiritual discipline?" And I would reply that I come from a tradition of Tantra gurus and healers, and Tantra is my spiritual lineage. After hearing this, people would either start opening up more and come closer, emotionally and physically. And some people would also close and make a distance, emotionally and physically. I could not ignore what was happening. It was very much visible. And one day, I finally decided to find the reason behind this interesting behavior that I was observing in people. So I went for the answers where all of us go to for the answers. Google.com. And Google opened my eyes that day. The moment I put the word Tantra on Google, I realized Tantra is soft porn in America and in Western countries. And it was also the day when I asked my father, "Dad, did you train me to be a sex therapist?" And he right away said, "Of course not." It was also the day that Dad and we ended up having a very profound conversation about Tantra and all the misconceptions and wrong information that's out there about Tantra. This episode today is my attempt to reintroduce Tantra to all of you. And I want to talk about a Tantra that's accessible, safe, nurturing, healing, and above all, beyond all the misconceptions that you hear about Tantra or read about Tantra in the books and online and everywhere out there. I am Chandresh and this is Break the Norms. So before I start talking about Tantra, I wanted to address some of the questions that so many of you continue to ask through Instagram and through my website. The question is about how can you work with me? How can you study more or learn more with me? So I do retreats, I do public workshops on and off. All the information is always available on the website, cbmeditates.com. And most of the times, I would also have it posted on my Instagram account. If you live in LA, I'm sitting on this very amazing panel with Whitma, Well-Being in the Modern Age. And I'm sitting with the very, very amazing Michael Bernard Beckwith. You have seen him with Oprah in The Secret documentary, and he's one of the most respected spiritual teachers out there. And we are going to talk about identity politics. He's going to be there, I'm going to be there, and there are some other wonderful, wonderful speakers on this panel. So check out the information on my website. In addition, I'm teaching in New York at the amazing Omega Center, and that's happening in May. Also, I'm going to be sitting at a panel with University of Southern California. That's also happening in May. And finally, there's this amazing retreat on relationships that I'm going to teach in Sedona. Yes, that's happening in month of August. I think that's August 22nd. And finally, for those who live in West Coast, 1440 is one of the most amazing spiritual places. And I'm going to be teaching there somewhere around November. We just finalized it. The dates are something we're still looking into, either November or October, or could be New Year also. But you will know the dates within just a few days after this podcast is released. So yeah, I'm excited for all this good stuff that's happening. And I'm going to make Tantra a part of every conversation that I hold in any public place, online, offline, in my books. It's going to be something that I want to continue, talk about forever. And if you follow me on Instagram, last week I posted about my second book. I was sitting on the idea of second book for a long time. It changed many concepts, many forms, and finally I've decided to write my second book on Tantra. And also, fun fact, I started this podcast with intention of talking about Tantra. And I remember when I was sharing the potential title of this podcast, which was supposed to be Demystifying Tantra, a lot of people told me, if you have Tantra in the podcast title, maybe most people will not even listen to it. Maybe they'll shy away from playing it because Tantra is not understood in the most, nice way out there. So you need to have a title that appeals to everyone. So I didn't want to have just any other random title. So I went ahead with Break the Norms because so many people know me through Break the Norms. But Demystifying Tantra was the original title. And I wanted to make the podcast all about Tantra, which finally, is happening slowly and gently. And I feel so inspired and I feel so grateful to be able to just talk about Tantra and share more and more information about it. There were many other topics that I wanted to talk about for this particular episode number 9, but I realized everything will feel incomplete if I don't have an introduction of Tantra. So this episode is about just introducing Tantra, and then we'll have many aspects of it unfolding gently in the future episodes. And as always, continue to send me your questions, your suggestions, and all that, you want me to talk about on this podcast. Finally, one last note, and then I'll talk about Tantra. I'll be starting a mini episode that will happen once a week in addition to these longer episodes. Those mini episodes will be answering your questions. I'm going to call it Ask CB. And most likely, I'll share a phone number with all of you where you can call, leave your question, and then I'll play your voice, and then I'll answer the question. I still get a lot of questions, but they are on emails or Instagram, and I will be answering those. But it's always fun to have the real voice who wants to ask the question. So I hope you will send the questions on phone also. All right. So all the announcements are done. All the good stuff about future events is announced, and let's talk about Tantra. So, when we say the word Tantra, of course, most people understand it as some sort of acrobatic sexuality. Most books, online courses, most meditations about Tantra is all about sex or enhancing your sexual energy. But in reality, the deeper meaning of Tantra is technique of self-realization. That's how Tantra has always been understood. The technique of self-awareness, the technique of spiritual awakening. The literal meaning of Tantra is technique. So when you hear Tantra as just all about sex, that's not only wrong, but I think it's majorly misleading. And misleading about a science that's supposed to be extremely sacred and very powerful for your self-awareness. Now, Tantra is connected with so many Eastern spiritual traditions. There are many modes of meditation, many methods of meditation, where Tantra is used as the prime way to go deeper into that path. Kundalini is connected with Tantra. There are a lot of mantras that are connected with Tantra. There's a lot of rituals in the Hindu traditions which are totally part of Tantra. And Tantra is not a religion. As I said, it's simply a technique, a science of self-awareness. And when it started in India, it was looked upon as a very revolutionary way to understand self-awareness, a very powerful way, a very new way to experience your higher consciousness. And somewhere I feel when Tantra started getting more power, that was the time when religion was getting a little more corrupted. And there were yogis and masters who started creating more powerful and more free and raw and rebellious ways of just diving into the powerful ways of consciousness. You may see the mention of Tantra in various diverse traditions that are coming from Eastern spirituality. And they all are right in mentioning Tantra because it's looked upon as a science of self-awareness. And there are many yogis and mystics who use the word Tantra in explaining their spirituality, in explaining how they teach their own lineage, the ways to cultivate self-awareness. And that's why you'll see in Buddhist traditions, they have their own concept of Tantra. In the more Hindu or Eastern traditions, you'll see their tradition of Tantra is different. The Tantra I'm talking today comes from the tradition of Shiva. And Shiva is known as the founder of Tantra. A lot of yogis call him Adi Yogi, which means the first guru who ever walked in the planet. The first guru, the first master, the first teacher. And Shiva is also worshipped as a god among many Hindu devotees. And he's looked upon as a god because that's what India is. You will see there are so many godly beings there, such as Shiva, Ganesha, Krishna. And the more you read about them, the more you will question, were they humans or were they just God? Who were they? And they truly deserve a separate episode. And I promise to, make it happen. But just for the sake of this episode, know that Shiva that I'm talking about was the first master, first teacher, and he's looked upon as this powerful cosmic being whose vibrations are still felt in the mountains of Himalayas. And it's my deeper experience, hundreds of times, every time you meditate on Shiva mantras, you do start to experience a lot of powerful vibrations around you and within you. There's a lot of mantras that people continue to listen on the apps and YouTube. They are Shiva mantras. It's very much possible if you fall sick in India and you go to a doctor, the doctor will tell you, take this medication twice a day. And when you get chance, do the Shiva mantra. Shiva is connected with healing. And most stories that you will hear about the origin of Tantra, most of them are connected around Shiva. And I'm going to share one of those stories today with you. It's one of my favorites. And it also forms the foundation of an important aspect of Tantra. So one day Shiva was sitting with his partner Shakti, and she asked him questions about consciousness, enlightenment, healing, happiness, joy, and all those things that, we go through as a human being. And Shiva started answering each of her questions through meditation, through poetry, and this entire conversation was documented. And it came to be known as Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, which means the science of going beyond consciousness. And this is one of the most profound scriptures in Tantra. There are many translations available of it online. None of them are extraordinary. They are all right. But yeah, they will start to give you an interesting glimpse into one of the many, many aspects about Tantra. When I, teach meditation, I definitely pick and take inspiration from one of the meditations in the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra. There are 112 meditations in this entire document. And when I first started understanding and reading about Tantra and started meditating on Tantra, I was fascinated because these meditations, these methods started opening my entire conflicts within. It started to heal me in a way that I had never imagined. And when I quit Wall Street to pursue my journey as a professional in the spiritual healing work, I had a very little idea if I can translate the entire Tantra methods into a modern society. I was in New York. So I wanted to make sure I can understand Tantra and teach it in a way that can help people who are working in Wall Street, who are working who are dealing with day-to-day problems and not just the Wall Street problems. And what fascinated me, that this science is thousands of years old. And yet, even today, it's so relevant. In fact, every time I share about Tantra, the first word that people, tell me that it's so relevant, it's so needed in this world. So I want to talk today about some of the interesting principles about Tantra. There are so many that we can dive deeper into. But just to introduce Tantra in that simple and accessible way, I'll share with you few aspects of it. So one of the interesting aspects of Tantra is that it will never ask you to suppress anything. Tantra is against all sort of suppression. And by that I mean you could be a person with addiction. You could be a person who has anger problems with emotions, relationships. You could be dealing with impulsiveness, ego, and all tons of crazy things that we as a human being go through. But Tantra will not tell you that you got to get rid of addiction or anger and then you can join the sacred spiritual path. Tantra will tell you, treat your ego as an instrument to go beyond your problems. Treat your addiction as a way to go into higher consciousness. So when we talk about addiction, anger, ego, attachments, desires, all the things that religion would forbid or call sinful, Tantra will tell you all these things are very much part of who you are. And it will teach you how to go beyond these problems and find an outlet to your higher consciousness. I mean, I grew up hearing from all the people that anger is bad, ego is bad, desires are wrong. And yet I never met anyone who does not have these elements. So Tantra does not look at ego, anger, greed, attachments as a problem. It understands these things as simply a very important and basic element of human consciousness. If you are a human, you are going to have these elements. In fact, I often tell people that if you don't get angry, if you have never been angry, go to a doctor. There must be something wrong with you, because if you are a human, there's a solid chance that you will find yourself feeling anxious, angry, upset over things. So as a human being, we cannot let go or drop these things, but we can always understand the root of these things and find a way to experience our higher consciousness and find a way to experience our eternal bliss. That's what Tantra is all about. When you go to a Tantra teacher, he will or she will never tell you that this aspect of your personality is wrong. There is no right and wrong there. Everything simply is. And that takes me to the next principle about Tantra, the principle of pure consciousness. In Tantra, we see things as pure consciousness. When we are born as a child, we are born as a pure consciousness. There is no corruption in us. There is no jealousy, no possessiveness. We are simply this beam of joy. Have you ever seen a child getting angry or being happy? Look at their happiness. Even their anger makes you smile because when they're angry, it's beautiful. But have you seen yourself getting angry? I mean, when I see, not right now, but 10 years ago, when I would look at myself getting angry, I would wonder that I'm not even being angry beautifully. I could be fully angry, but I'm suppressing my anger because I'm told anger is bad. And that's how I see most people getting angry today. They want to be angry, but they get angry in installments. They want to scream, but they don't scream. Instead, they cry in installments. So Tantra always say, go back to your pure consciousness. Go back to your roots. When you're angry, be fully angry. When you are sad, be completely sad. Don't suppress the sadness. Don't suppress the anger. Whatever you're feeling, fully feel it. I met someone last week and she was telling me that she goes to these Kundalini and Tantra classes in Los Angeles. And they tell her, just stop thinking and do this. stop getting angry and do this. And I said, but did you ask them? How can we just stop thinking? I wish it was that easy. Just stop thinking, right? But it's not that easy. And she said, no, she asked few questions and they would say, stop asking too many questions. And they call themselves as Tantra teachers, but that's not what a Tantra teacher would do. A Tantra teacher would encourage you to be angry, ask questions, question everything that you think you know. That's what Tantra has always been all about. And the route to pure consciousness is always through this purity of emotions. Have you ever felt that when you hug someone, we are not really hugging someone? When you kiss someone, we are not really kissing that person fully. There are so many old layers of us which comes into this intimate human expressions. But Tantra will tell us, whatever you do, be fully into it. If I'm talking to you right now, but also looking out the window, looking at my computer screen, looking at my phone, then I'm not being in that pure consciousness. Then I'm being all over the place. And it's so important to keep reminding yourself of that pure consciousness space. I've had so many interesting episodes with my clients where this one principle of being in pure consciousness would do the magic. And I know it can do the magic because I have experienced the magic in me through pure consciousness. And another aspect of Tantra that's closely connected with pure consciousness is understanding your masculine and feminine energy. So all of us are a beautiful blend of masculine and feminine. If you are just masculine or if you're just feminine, then you will clearly know it's not bringing out your complete aspect, your complete expression. Being overly masculine or overly feminine or not having enough masculine or enough feminine, that creates its own troubles. Tantra is all about the balance of masculine and feminine. In fact, it's one of the beautiful forms of Shiva. It's called Ardhanariyeshwar, which is half masculine and half feminine. It's beautiful balance of both. And I'm going to put all these Sanskrit words in the show notes so that you clearly see the images of all the words that I'm talking about. I remember as a teenager, I would incline toward more masculine aspect of who I am because, as a teenager, you just want to be a macho man. That's all. In fact, there used to be a wrestler in those days, Macho Man. I think that was his name. There was a brief time in my life when I just wanted to hit the walls, do boxing, and be as physically aggressive as possible. So, I kept on encouraging that macho side, and I realized after a while that it's not masculine. It's suppressed masculine. Because when I want to cry, I'm not crying. When I want to laugh fully, I'm not laughing fully because that's not what men are doing around me. And I'm so thankful that my guru is my father. And I remember when I finally got his attention to be his student in Tantra, the first thing he said was, if you want to be a student in Tantra, you have to invoke and nurture the feminine energy in you. And I wanted to ask him, does that mean I need to buy pink jeans or cry over every sunset? Because as a teenager, that's what my definition of feminine was, that you just wear these, pink clothes and that's what feminine is. And he said, no, feminine is being receptive, being open, being compassion. And compassion is one of the most beautiful qualities of feminine that I've come across. And you'll be surprised, Tantra is most likely the only spiritual tradition where all the deities, all the energies are feminine. Although Shiva is known as the founder of Tantra, but besides Shiva, you will never ever hear about any other masculine deity in Tantra. All the methods of worship, mantras, they all are feminine. And I'm going to have a separate podcast on balancing the masculine and feminine because I think it's such an important topic to talk. And then I want to come to one of the important and very relevant aspect of Tantra, which is indulging in life with awareness. So Tantra is all about indulgence, but indulgence with awareness. There are many Tantra schools, many Tantra teachers, students who completely went wrong because they started it with indulgence, with awareness, but very quickly the awareness went away and only indulgence remained. And that's where Tantra has gone wrong in many ways. Or I would say the people who became the teachers or students of Tantra, they became wrong. Because Tantra gives you so much freedom of life. As a Tantra student and teacher, I have complete freedom over my emotions, my choices. And when you have the freedom, it's a dangerous thing. Human being is always known to exploit their freedom. And having a guru is a very powerful thing because they can continue to kick you and puncture your ego and bring you down to the rooted elements of who you are. But for most people who are just reading or hearing about Tantra, they will start to go into indulgence part and, clearly go beyond the awareness. And that's when things start to go wrong. So what does it mean indulging with awareness? It simply means whatever you do in life, do it with complete awareness. It would mean listening to me right now. It would also mean having your breakfast, lunch, dinner. It would also mean taking a shower, eating food, drinking water. It would mean every basic thing that you do. Most people understand spirituality or Tantra or yoga as something that they have to do for that one dedicated hour in the day. But that's just the charging part. When you're off the meditation cushion, when you're off the meditation studio, that's when the real challenge starts. And that's when you have to know that your real responsibility starts now. When you're not surrounded by the perfect music of your meditation app, when you're not surrounded by the people who are chanting mantras. The real test of Tantra, of your spirituality, happens when you are driving on the road, no car is moving, and there's a guy behind you, fully angry, and he's blaming you for entire traffic. That's when you just have to take a deep breath, smile, and tell yourself, okay, I'm going to indulge in this experience with complete awareness. I'm not going to react. I'm going to mindfully respond. And trust me, this mindfulness, this power over your awareness starts to create magic around you. And people will feel your silence. They will feel your peace. They will feel how amazingly mindful you are in the chaos. This plays a huge role in relationships. When you are indulging with someone sexually, romantically, emotionally, if you keep awareness in it, you will be surprised how powerfully that relationship starts to build and how much of healing that starts to happen on an emotional level. Because Tantra is not something that would make you dependent. It wants to make you independent. It wants to give you all the freedom in the world that you can have over your enlightenment. But that would mean you have to cultivate a strong daily discipline, a strong practice, a dedication. That's why I call meditation as a love affair with the divine, because it is a love affair. You have to be excited about it. You have to show up for it. Imagine you commit to someone that you truly love, passionately, emotionally, divinely, and then you don't show up to see them for 1 week, 2 weeks, or you just see them whenever you want to. It's going to end very quickly, right? Because every relationship, every commitment demands a certain discipline from you. It demands a certain promise of love from you. And Tantra demands that promise of dedication, of discipline. In the past years, I've come across so many people, countless people who would, ask me how I can get into Tantra, how can I get started, and I want to, change the world through Tantra and do all these things. And I give them some quick stuff to get started, and then I won't see them for, months, sometimes year, 2 years, and then they'll show up after a long time. And then, they'll tell me things happened, life happened, and I couldn't do any of this, but hey, I'm back again, so let's restart. And it got very draining for me after a certain point to keep sharing this stuff and, see the people who are not committing to the path. And I stopped initiating the students into Tantra. And I'm restarting it now with a lot of mindful thinking, a lot of planning. So in few months, I will hopefully get the students into the right lineage of Tantra, how they need to do. And because thankfully, and I feel very fortunate, I've come across students who were able to show discipline, love, dedication to this path, because that's what it truly demands. So in nutshell, the principles of Tantra, just the ones that we discussed today, I'm going to just, recall them again and then have few questions that came from Instagram. I'll answer those. So Tantra does not suppress. It encourages transformation. It will encourage you to transform everything that you have, everything you are, and creating an outlet of higher consciousness through it. Tantra encourages being in pure consciousness. Whatever conflict you're going through, remind yourself that I am pure consciousness. I am pure awareness. I am not my thoughts. I'm not my stress. I am pure consciousness. And Tantra encourages indulging in life with complete awareness. Whatever you do it with awareness. Whatever you experience it with pure awareness. And finally, the balance of masculine and feminine. Tantra would be incomplete if we don't mention masculine and feminine balance. It's such an important part of Tantra. And there are many other aspects of Tantra that I will be going through in the future episodes because I want to maintain a certain length of every podcast. But I will be answering a few questions that I got from you. So this is question and answer session. The first question is from Michelle. She asked, is there belief in something like a soulmate in Tantra? Hi Michelle. First thing, Tantra does not encourage the word belief. It says every belief system limits your human experience. It says don't believe anything, know it. So if you're sitting right now and if there's a light bulb where you're sitting, and if I tell you, can you believe there is light? You'll be like, I don't have to believe it. I just see it. Or if it's still, sunny or night where you're sitting, and if I ask you, can you believe there is night? Or can you believe there's light outside? You don't have to believe it. You simply see it, right? So Tantra encourages a true direct experience of all the teachings. It says don't believe, but know it. Don't believe, but experience it. Now, second part of your question, the soulmate. So I could simply say no, Tantra does not believe in soulmates. And that would be answering in the context to how soulmates are looked upon today. I think in modern society, in this time and age, most people understand soulmate as that one person who's your most powerful, passionate, divine lover. But when you look into spiritual teachings, when you look into teachings like Tantra, it will say there's no one soulmate, there's more than one. And soulmate don't have to be your romantic lover. Soulmates could be more than one person, and usually they are more than one person. I mean, if you simply look at the word soulmate, mate of the soul, friend of the soul, a companion of the soul. So there's very good chances that if you are a person who lives life with awareness, who lives life mindfully, you will come across so many of your own soulmates. And they could be as close as your spouse, partner, best friend, family member, or they could be someone who just made your coffee for you at the Starbucks you visited. They could be someone who just came across you in a train and helped you randomly. Soulmates also have soul contracts with us. They have karmic contracts with us. So many people who are our soulmates, they show up in our life to complete that contract. And when the contract is done, they move on, and you have to move on also. The tragedy of human being is we do not move on easily. We don't want to move on because we live in the mind, and mind loves living in the past or in the future. So one thing I'll recommend you, open your heart to all kind of love, not just one selective form of love or 5 selective forms of love. Open your heart to love, because love is not what we do. Love is what we are. It's a state of awareness. And when you truly start to live love as a state of awareness, you'll be surprised that you're not only going to understand and recognize when your soulmates show up, but you're also going to be, effortlessly blending with them in playing the roles that you have for them and they have for you. So that would be my answer to you. And let's move on to the second question. This is from Brett. Can you explain how tantric meditation differs from TM? So in one line, Tantra is like father or mother, and TM is one of the many children of Tantra. When Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of TM, when he came to United States, he brought just meditation with him. But as you start to do your things in United States or anywhere, you get to know how when you have to teach a certain thing, it has to be blended, modified, so that people can understand it the way they can, digest it. What my understanding is, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi understood, because there were also a lot of brilliant people around him, which were, very successful in business and science and all sort of fields. They must have recommended him that if you want to teach meditation in America, you got to make it accessible. You got to make it scientific. You got to have proofs for it. And that's how TM was most likely born. I mean, that's how most modern spiritual schools or spiritual methods are being cultivated. They're being modified so that we can understand it. And TM is basically a silent meditation with a mantra. And there are countless mantras in Tantra, and TM has a limited set of mantras, again, because Maharishi Mahesh Yogi is not alive anymore. So no one has the power right now to give the mantras to people. He created a template which their followers and students are following. So TM is most likely, I would say, less than 1% of what Tantra is. Tantra is a vast universe, and TM is one of the children of it. If you understand TM and put your heart and soul into it, it will prepare you to become a much better and deeper tantric student. And I could say the same for mindfulness as well. Mindfulness has also the product of the same formula or template, that not everyone is going to be attracted toward just meditation practice. So let's make it accessible, easy to understand kind of meditation, and mindfulness was born. But if you devote your heart and soul into mindfulness, you will become a better tantric meditation student also. All right. Also, you have to understand, Tantra looks upon you as a complete being. There are personalized meditation practices under Tantra. There are meditation practices that can make you a complete successful being in whatever you are. There are meditation practices and spiritual practices in Tantra for business people, creative people, people who just want to dive deeper into spirituality. You name it, and there's a meditation methods, formulas, experiments for every kind of being in there. Because Tantra says you don't have to renounce anything to become a spiritually enlightened being. So whatever you do, you could become extremely successful in that, along with becoming spiritually fulfilled as well. So it's very vast and very, very powerful science. But the key is you have to work with someone who knows what they're doing. And then the things start to happen in a very interesting way. All right, so next question. If you could sum it up in a word, what is the essence of Tantra? And that's from Ashley. So Ashley, if I could sum it up in a word, I would say the essence of Tantra is transformation. It would take in your anger, ego, greed, impulsiveness, addiction, desires, and everything that you carry within. And it will use your existing energy to transform into higher consciousness. So as a Tantra student, you don't have to change anything, but you have to transform everything. You have to allow it to happen. That's what the essence of Tantra would be. And the next question is from Nina. Why Tantra became famous for sex? So obviously this question has been asked plenty of times in every public talk I have done, because obviously I tend to speak very passionately about Tantra, and then people do ask, if you say Tantra is all the sacred and powerful science, why did it become famous only for sex? Well, the truth is, sex sells. It has always sold. It continues to be sold in a very, I think, degrading form. If you live in LA, it will take you 10 minutes to understand how terribly we are degrading the energy of sex. You could drive on Sunset Boulevard and you'll see terrible hoardings of people selling, objectifying women and selling them on per hour basis. I have never been a big fan of this. I've spoken to so many sex workers in the past. I've spoken to so many men and women who are part of this industry, and so many of them are purely unhappy with that. Anyway, that's a topic for a different podcast. So Nina's question is why it became famous for sex? Because sex sells. And, as a human being, we want to know the formulas, the easy part, the spicy part. So when Tantra started coming to the West, the publishers, the people who were responsible for spreading the right knowledge about it, the teachers who were responsible for spreading the right word about Tantra, they must have thought it's becoming really complicated selling Tantra as a science of enlightenment, because who wants enlightenment? I mean, there have been many stories about what I just said. One of the interesting stories is from Buddha, when his students complained that you don't give enlightenment to people. They all come here every day to listen to you, and you talk about all sort of stuff, but you never talk about being enlightened. And Buddha said, I'm glad you brought this up. So why don't you ask everyone what do they want, and I'll give it to them. So everyone was asked to fill on this piece of paper, what do you want? And people wrote job, relationship, better wife, better husband, good children, money, and all sort of problems. Not even a single person entered enlightenment because no one wants it. I experimented with it in New York at least 3 times when I started my work. I would ask questions. I would ask people to fill on this paper. What do you want from me, or what do you want from these meditations? And the most popular thing was relationships. Then peace, bliss, happiness. These are the immediate problems of people. So I can imagine when the spiritual teachers or the publishers or all the people who were responsible for spreading the knowledge of Tantra, they realized not many people are going to buy the books or the products if we just talk about the cosmic, sacred part of Tantra. But sex is always a hot-selling product. Let's make Tantra about sex. And let's sell it aggressively. And I think it will work out. And that's how Tantra just became all about sex. And trust me, when I started writing my first book, Break the Norms, I was clearly told to write a book about Tantra sex. And I'm approaching the second book now, and I'm still being told, write a book on Tantra sex. It will sell. It will bring you in the market. But yeah, of course, I'm not going to do it because there's nothing that's called Tantra sex. It's purely a marketing term. Tantra does talk about sex. It talks about transformation of sexual energy into cosmic energy, just the way it will talk about transforming your anger, ego, greed into a cosmic consciousness. That's how Tantra treats sexual energy. But sadly, unfortunately, Tantra has been marketed as only about sexual energy. In fact, Tantra is one of those sciences who almost discourage you into indulging mindlessly in sex. It will discourage you to treat sex casually. But yeah, that's a topic for an altogether different podcast. And also, there are still some modern teachers who literally sell meditation programs with claims that it's going to improve your sexual life. It's going to improve your sexual energy. And they're selling those programs like hot cupcakes. Yeah, but it's unfortunate. It's terrible, but it's happening. You stop buying it, they will stop creating it. That's, what I'm going to say. And one last question from Anna. Okay, would you recommend any groups or communities in Los Angeles to do white tantra? I don't know of any communities to practice tantra. Also, I don't understand why tantra is called white tantra. So I'm sure if there's white tantra, there must be other colors in tantra, but I never heard of that ever. I do hear in LA there's white tantra. I guess white tantra is regarded as a safe tantra, but I have no clue why they call it white tantra. So there's no right mindful community in LA. Any communities that I have come across, they're basically pushing their agenda, their kind of tantra. They want to recruit more members, increase the membership of their school, their ashram, their, community. So the answer is no. But if you do want to practice tantra, I would say start putting the best effort in your daily meditation practice. If you could put 30 minutes to 1 hour on the very minimum level, you will start preparing, you will start getting ready for the right tantra practices. I think the time has come. The tantra practices are very much about to rise. And before I end, I want to mention that my second book is going to be about tantra. I don't know if I already mentioned that in the podcast, but I'm really excited, very much charged to create this book. I don't know how long it will take. It could take weeks, months, or years, but I am completely ready for it. But that's all for today. Thank you for listening. See you next time. I hope this podcast may travel through the untapped universe of your darkness, light, courage, passion, and so much more. Please do subscribe and be ready to break your norms. I am so excited and very honored to be part of your sacred journey through this podcast.